Today we are joined by Bobby Holmes, licensed master social worker. Bobby is a mental health therapist practicing out of Baltimore, Maryland. Bobby has practiced specialties empowering with black boys and multimedia storytelling. Bobby serves children, young adults, and individuals in family settings. Bobby is the founder of Son of a Dream, which is a multifaceted agency committed to supporting the healthy development and success of children, youth, and family. Bobby is also the host of Hugh Voice Podcast. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, brother. Appreciate you.
Man, we've known each other for a little bit over a year. We met at
Mhm,
an event called the Black Daddies Club, and
mhm.
that was December, I think, 2000 when we met. And ever since we met, you just have laid an impression on me for a couple of reasons. A, you're on the East Coast doing the work that you do. I'm an East Coast guy from Jamaica, Queens, New York. And I think I shared when we were introducing ourselves how I kind of felt disappointed that I wasn't able to give back to my community back on the East Coast now that I'm out here on the West Coast. I've transplanted out here. I'm still doing the work, but there's a piece of me that says, man, I wish I can get home and help my community. So I appreciate your support and the work that I'm doing and just the work that you're doing. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity, just to share with the audience some of the things that you're doing in Baltimore.
Okay. Uh I am a therapist, as you mentioned in introductions. I'm a mental health therapist, supporting youth and families, as well as adult men, offering therapy, holding space for folks. I also run Son of a Dream. That's where I offer workshops. I partner up with organizations to serve their youth for after school programming, as well as offer trainings and resources for social workers. So Son of a Dream, has a multi approach and goal, James. Whereas not only I focus on providing direct services for youth and families, but also focus on how can I support professionals like us and improving what they do, particularly as we talk about how do they show up for Black children, youth, and families. How can I share resources to help equip them to do so, right? So they can honor our experiences as well as provide interventions, provide methods that best support us. That's what I do in terms of Son of a Dream. Reflection of Kings, that is a partnership between Son of a Dream, and as well as African Youth Alchemy, another brother here, another father here in Baltimore that's doing great work, where we partner up together, figure out how can we teach Black boys how to use media to learn issues that's impacting their community, connect with Black men like yourself in the community, and also tell the stories of their community. So I'm just grateful for all those opportunities to be able to do so. And I think I covered it. And I am someone's husband and someone's father. I'm a
Definitely.
husband of 11 years,
Yeah.
and I'm a father of two daughters like yourself.
Yes, yes. Girl dad power, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And thank you for sharing, the work that you're doing out there in Baltimore. And you just use media. You talked about media, and as we're doing a podcast, I follow your podcast and some of the events that you do on Facebook. I'm definitely going to leave that stuff in the comments and leave your information because it's a great resource. And we need more folks to participate in learning about all of us that's in this world. So I appreciate you for that. And I wanted to ask you this question because in all of the work you do, right, your license is a master of social work. That's a
Mhm.
little different because you have an added piece to that license. Could you speak a little bit as to the training that you received and what that license allows you to do in the community?
Absolutely. So I received my master's degree from the great Morgan State
Yeah.
University in Baltimore, my master's of social work, where I'm learning about social work practice. And that degree allowed me to be qualified to sit for my licensure. Sit is an examination process you have to go through to get your licensure, so you could be able to practice therapy for one, and other forms of social work in different spaces. So that master's degree of social work set me up to transition to acquire my licensure.
Gotcha. And you do lots of different type of things in the community, and it's not
Mhm.
just sit down in a chair kind of speak therapy type of stuff. You use different type of methods, and that's important because everybody's mental health looks a little different, right? And some
Right.
folks will benefit from the sit down on the couch speaking to someone. Someone else might benefit from a different method or technique. So you're able to do lots of different things in your practice.
Absolutely. Like I said, I work with boys.
Mhm.
Boys like to be active.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we're men and boys not always talkative.
Right.
Uh, so one of the things I do, man, and James, so you can love and appreciate this, I implement sports, man.
Thank you.
You know, I've taken boys to the basketball court, and we work on drills, and we talk. We're doing the simple basketball fundamental drills. I'm no athlete by no stretch of the imagination. I haven't played ball since I was a kid,
Yeah.
but I love sports too. I enjoy sports. I enjoy competitive spirit. So, and I know that movement
Yeah.
is important, and a way that you can engage youth and keep their attention.
Right.
So, I do basketball drills. Hey, I'll say, hey, come on outside and we'll throw the football around.
There you go.
Still talking, still getting our work in. And it may not look like a session. Like,
Right.
you just outside throwing a football with my son. No, I'm engaging him. This is, keeping his attention.
Right.
So I'm throwing the ball back. Well, he's focused on me.
Right.
He needs to be focused on the ball as well because otherwise it's going to be hitting his face. So, it's an easy back and forth, but I'm able to talk to him. He's able to talk to me and
Right.
engage. I bring out the boxing gloves, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I roll around with this stuff in my trunk. I brought out the bags. Like you seem, I told him, but you seem like you got a lot on your chest today.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to step outside. I bring out the gloves. I got pads, got mitts. Hey man, have at it. I say we're gonna do a couple of drills. Talk to me.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that's why
Right.
I say my saying is, hey, you talk, I listen.
Gotcha.
And let the young brother pound away, getting the workout in, exerting himself, getting that aggression out, and he telling me what's on his mind.
There you go.
And the boys love it, man.
Right.
The
Right.
boys
Right.
love it.
And very
So I go different ways
yeah.
in my therapy practice
Right.
to
Right.
engage you.
Definitely. And also, bringing in the media part, whether it's a rap song or, a poem or something like that. The object is to get the young person and adults too engaged on their level. And so many good things can happen. And you might not even know it from looking from the outside. So the tools of your trade are many, not just your mouth, your heart, your mind, but all of those exterior things that you just talked about. And that's important for the audience to know that it looks different for everybody. And it's about finding your lane, the tools that are going to work for you. So just want to transition, definitely have a couple questions because I want it to be really plain and clear for the audience that's listening. And we're talking about our dads. So the one thing I wanted to ask, why is it important for men to talk about and to take care of their mental health?
It's essential, James, when we live in a society, right, that has socialized men and boys to behave a certain way,
Yeah.
behave in a way that I want to say minimizes our sense of humanity, right? And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is we're based on these practices and the culture. We're taught to express our masculine, express that manhood a certain way.
Yeah.
It can only be through showing how tough you are, how dominant you are. And if that is the only way you show up in the world, that's your only identity, then what about the rest of you?
Right.
That's caring, that's compassionate, that's heartfelt, that is confused sometimes, that is disappointed and even hurt. What about the rest of your humanity, that's often excluded? And with that stuff, put in the context of dads, of we have this mentality, again, socialized in society, that we show up as providers.
Right.
Our job is to get up in the morning, go to work, bring home the bacon, and that's it. You know, and that is our role. And again, we're limited, because then how do we show up for our wives, our spouses? How do we show up for our children? how do we engage and interact with them if that's all if that's the identity we have adopted as men.
Right. Right.
And I don't leave any space to talk about the stress that we're going through. What happens when we step outside this door to go to work? Whether it was, just dealing with the frustration of, administration,
Yeah.
your
Yep.
bosses and supervisors, dealing with colleagues, or, dealing with microaggression, racism within the workplace, things that you engage with and experience. Where does that go
Right.
when you come home? Outside of, I'm just going to sit in front of the TV and watch the game and have a beer and forget about
Yeah.
that. I'm escape,
Yeah.
and they are ways that a lot of us cope. You have some folks say, I'm gonna watch the game. You have some folks say, I'm gonna play the video game. They gonna find a way to cope. I'm gonna have a drink. I'm gonna go have a cigar. You find different ways to cope. Sometimes it's maladaptive behavior
Right.
that you want you develop to cope with the stresses you're going through. But there's no healthy way to get that stress and that frustration out.
Right.
We human. We go through things. We have disagreements with our wives. We have disagreements with our children. We feel disappointment sometimes when our children do something that we don't like. What's the safe space for men to go
Yeah.
to talk about these different things?
Right.
It
Right.
has to be a safe space for us to do so. And I think that's so critical and it's so important,
Right.
James,
Right.
to our healthy development and how our humanity, seeing our own humanity as men as fathers.
Right, right. And you said you hit on so many things, and the image, the identity that we've carried from the beginning of time. When you
Mm,
look at, caveman drawings, you've got, the lady's hair in your hand and you're dragging, you got the big old stick because you're going out to hunt. That has been how things have been from the beginning of time. And I think
mm.
we are at a point now where we're starting to realize that it can't be that way. I think more folks are getting more engaged, more educated, and that's why we're here doing some of these things. Sometimes it's hard to realize when you may be in a decline. What are some of the warning signs that we as men could look at and say, yeah, that's something I need to address? What are some of the warning signs that we can try to be more aware of?
James, one thing I often say is you can't hide behavior. It's going to show up. You can tell lies to yourself, you can tell lies to other people. Behavior is going to show up. So all the stress that you may be feeling and dealing with, it's going to come out. No matter how hard you try to keep it down. It's like a hamper. You putting a bunch of dirty clothes in, after a while, start to overflow. You try to push those clothes deep down the hamper, it's gonna start to overflow. And how it comes up is, hey, you're lashing out at your wife. You're lashing out at your children over something minor.
Right,
You
right,
know, you become disengaged. You don't want to be bothered by anyone in your household when you come to work. You used to maybe enjoying some things going on with the fellas. You probably don't want to do it anymore. You probably don't even have time to do that anymore because you're working so much. So the impact of this stress
yeah,
and what you're feeling, it starts to show up in one way or another. I remember is a brother I held space for that back in the day, he was caught up in the streets, right? So now, totally different man, and he volunteers at his church, right? And one of that role was as a security for his church. And so he says he has a habit of, no matter where he goes, he scans the room. He's always scanning the room, being aware of his surroundings and what's going on. And I had to bring it to his attention. Like, brother, that's a sign of your trauma.
yeah, yeah,
Hypervigilance. The sign of your, when you were out there in the streets, you needed that for you to survive. You had to watch out for the police. You had to watch out for the stick-up boys. So back in the day when you were out there, you needed that skill to keep yourself alive,
right,
keep yourself alert. And that is something that shows up today,
yeah,
in a regular setting where there is no direct immediate harm coming your way, but still that is still on. And some people say, well, isn't that a strength? Yeah, it can be a strength, but it's also important to understand where did that behavior stem from?
Right. Right.
So, James, whether we want to or not, these behaviors are going to come up.
Definitely, they're going to come up. And you just mentioned the hypervigilance. I have two brothers in law enforcement. We talk about those things of how you park your car so you're able to get out of that spot in a hurry,
So,
not
yeah.
putting your back to a door. And those things are part of survival, like you said, where it comes from. But it can also overtake you, especially you're going home, you're sitting at the dinner table, and you're like, no, I need to move, right? That's a sign that something might need to be addressed. You hit a big word that I wanted to talk about, and that word starts with T. It's trauma.
Mm,
And sometimes we don't think of generational traumas and how that might have an impact on us. The things that your mom experienced, your grandmother experienced from their upbringing. Because I just had a conversation with a group of people sharing my story, and I let them know how my mom was growing up in the mid 70s had an impact on how she raised me to be safe, to deal with racism. So I carry those things. So trauma, can you talk a little bit to us about trauma and how that has an effect on us?
when you talk about something like generational trauma and just how it shows up, that as you just pointed out, how your mother raised you in the 70s, you know, and I imagine, she grew up in the 60s and 50s and her upbringing.
Yeah.
So she was shaped and influenced by her environment
Yes.
and how that passed, how we pass these things on to our children,
Yeah.
what we experience, how we parent, how we were parent, as a child. We take some of these things that our parents did that we feel like, okay, well, it worked for me, so I'm gonna do it with our children, and in cases, even if it's harmful. So hey, my father came down on me. It may be someone that says that, like, hey, my father got into my butt, he laid into me, he put them hands on me. So in my mind, when you go out and you have a son and you raise a son, you may think, hey, well, I'm gonna put my hands on him when he get out of line.
Right. Right.
There's no engagement, there's really no talking. It's just straight to the belt or it's straight to the hands. Um, and that's how it shows up, and in some cases, unfortunately, it gets to the point, well, if you make beating on somebody with your fist, that is abuse,
Yeah.
but understand you're not seeing it as that. In some cases, you're like, well, that's what happened to me, and that's what kept me in line and kept me straight. But you're not seeing that as that being abuse,
Right.
and you inflict that upon your children
Yeah.
because it wasn't no, oh, well, you on timeout or we gonna take privileges away. It was,
Hands
hey,
on.
you
Yeah.
can catch me when I get home from work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and how these behaviors show up, generational trauma, racial trauma, and especially those things being intertwined over the years, as you talked about how you were raised, how your mother were raised. Black parenting is very unique, um, because under the conditions we had to learn to raise our children,
Yeah.
under conditions we had to live for survival. Parenting was very unique. Even now today, our parenting our children is very unique because you guys say, all right, if you stop by the police,
The talk.
here's you got to say this is how you got to behave. Like it's actually a thing in our community. We have to have what they call the talk, um, because Black parenting is just so different and it's so unique. It's different when you are a girl dad on how you parent your children versus a boy dad. What the things you say to prepare your girls when they go out in a sexist society.
Right.
So all of these things definitely show up. And what's harmful that you've learned throughout your family, you know, and you stand the potential to inflict upon your children. Some people stop the trauma, stop the cycle right there and say, no, I'm not going to do what my parents and my grandparents did. I see what they did. I see how harmful and toxic they were. The buck stops here. The cycle is broken with me, and I'm going to do something different with my children. Some people, they continue that on. So generational trauma is definitely real in our communities and something that we have to wrestle with.
Yeah.
All of our family,
Yeah.
your family, everyone.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I do in the workshops with the fathers and dads that I work with is we make a father plan, our fatherhood plan as to what type of dad we want to be. And we address a lot of the things that you just talked about. What were some of the negative things that I grew up with my father or father figure grandparents, right? Let's get rid of those. What are some of the good things that they gave us? Let's keep those. What are some of the things that I want to bring to the table? So we do that. It's a plan that can change. There's principles that will always stay loving, nurturing, caring to our children. But we definitely want to take a look at some of those negative ways that we were brought up in the past. And that's how we handle, some of that trauma stuff in the very beginning when we start our work. No, thank you for that because it's big. And, a lot of folks, one of the things that I like to bring forth is like, there's no difference where we can have a great understanding of what PTSD is, right? We can understand that, oh, folks come back maybe from war or something like that, and they have that. But it's very similar when you talk about generational trauma as well. To me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm no expert, but it's kind of the same thing. So something worth looking at. Thank you.
Definitely. The thing is, there's no post. It continues.
Right.
It continues definitely.
Yeah.
When you talk about generational trauma. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So we talked about some of the warning signs. What are some of the things, and it's a process, right? And we help people along in this process of recognizing some of these things because sometimes it's hard to do it yourself. What are some of the things folks can do once they get to that awareness? Yeah, I need some help. What are some of those practical steps that an individual can take?
I believe it's important for me to acknowledge some things,
Okay.
James, that people are, Black folks, due to the history of racism, are very reluctant to engage with certain systems,
Hmm.
the healthcare systems, not trustworthy of institutions such as hospitals, for very good reason, because these are institutions that historically inflicted trauma in our community.
Yeah.
That plays into folks' fears and concerns around COVID right now,
Right.
as well as the vaccine. Due to these harmful relationships with the Black community throughout the years, folks are reluctant to seek help um, because of that very tumultuous relationship. And I say that, understanding that is a contributing factor to folks being reluctant to engage with mental health professionals, to engage, to seek out therapy. I'm not telling nobody my business. I'm not crazy.
Right.
The stigma around mental health. And again, definitely with men like I'm not talking to no side. I don't need no help. I don't talk to no strength. That's our thinking, because that's our understanding of mental health, and our understanding of what it means to get help and support.
Right. Right.
So some folks feel reluctant. So to that point, I think it's important for every mental health professional to acknowledge that,
Yeah.
when you initially engaging with folks, that stigma, that reluctant behavior. Also, it's important that unfortunately, one thing that's hitting our profession, brother James, is it's not a lot of Black men, doing this work. Not a lot of Black men that are doing therapy. Is very short, and oftentimes we respond best to people who look like us, who understand and get some of the nuances of our history in our community. So that's where we feel comfortable. But oftentimes, when people find out, oh my God, you do therapy, I calls, text messages, emails nonstop. Unfortunately, I can only support for so many people. But it's a huge problem. Even if I'm living in a predominantly Black area, working in Baltimore City, where you still have that there's a deficit in terms of black men that's doing this
Right,
work.
right,
So that also makes people reluctant because you want somebody that looks like you. So that, James, I put that onus on those two, around the relationships with the black community, around the lack of black men in the profession. That onus is on the profession.
right, right, right,
The profession has to do its work, because looking at that point, when somebody gets to the point where they're ready to seek help, right? To your question, we have to make sure we're ready and prepared to best show up to support people. And right now, James, we're simply not.
we're not on a lot of on a lot of points. Everything that you said, 100%. I
Mm,
am not a mental health professional by license, right? But I
mm,
work in the field. So
mm,
I've been fortunate enough to do lots of training to increase my awareness and to increase my skills. And
mm,
this looking through things through a trauma informed lens is
mm,
very important. It's
mm,
not what's wrong with you, it's what happened, right? We have to figure that out, and our mentality has to shift, right? We talk about different cultures and settings. I don't know anybody who wants to really create, you got some folks that are just out there, but most folks aren't trying to put themselves in harm's way on purpose. There's a
right.
reason behind those things, and it's usually about survival in some type of capacity. So, now I thank you for bringing that up because the profession has to do better, not just in our community, but for men in general. I go to different places with education, and they are, it's 10 to 2, female to men, and that is barriers for us into looking for help. You talked about stigma. And I wanted to bring up two individuals that have been in the news recently in the NFL for this reason of mental health and seeking it. Lane Johnson, Philadelphia Eagle tackle, just came out maybe a few weeks ago, really talking about his mental health, needing to take a break. Calvin Ridley, Atlanta Falcon player, did the same thing just recently. Do you think when we see our athletes, because you mentioned coping, some of us want to do our sports and so on and so forth. Do you think it's a good thing? Well, it's a good thing that these guys are taking care of their mental health. What type of effect do you think it would have on the general population when they see these athletes that they look up to and admire coming out and taking care of their mental health?
I think it's awesome, brother James. I see it as a culture shift, not just within professional sports, sports as a whole, whether you're talking about college, pop, high school, pop Warner, um, and our society at large, the way we look at mental health, sports fans, the way we engage, and we worship celebrities, we worship these professional athletes, and we look at them as if they're superhuman. I remember being a Michael Jordan fan, and these athletes are just like out of this world phenomenon to us, especially when you are a youth. So to see them be vulnerable
Yeah.
and say, I have to take care of me, um, and us, witnessing as a public for one, it definitely checks us as fans. Um, because it checks us in a sense that reminds us we don't own these professional athletes. They don't owe us anything, you know. Um, and they have a right to take care of their health, just like we have that right. It's a reality check that I think the sports world and fans need. We have no ownership, as we saw with Simone Biles during the Summer Olympics. We don't own these people. And we
Right.
saw with Kyrie Irving, we don't own these people. They have a right to take care of themselves. And I think they're definitely setting a great example for young folks. And again, causing a ripple effect that, hey, maybe not just on a professional level, but maybe on collegiate level as well, maybe in high school and on down, that we need to be attentive of how we engage
Yeah.
with these young folks. We need to be attentive of how the pressure we put on these young folks and how do we respond and show up.
Yeah.
So I think it's great, man. It's definitely a culture shift, and
Definitely.
I'm
Yeah. And I'm glad they're leading the way in that, because when you were just talking about it, it just really reminded me of the mentality of the, shut up and dribble, shut up and throw the ball. We don't own these human beings. They're not here just for our entertainment. They go home to their family, their spouses, their partners, their moms, dad, and their children, just like we do when we pay for that ticket. So it's really us just really loving humanity. You know what I mean? Just the humanity in another person that really has to come to light. So thank you for sharing that. And excuse me, just, we talked a little bit about different modalities, therapy looking different for different people. I know in our culture, lots get done in a barbershop. There's shows with LeBron and these different guys with the barbershop. They're able to go in a safe place. And people don't like to hear that, right? Oh, the safe place. What is it? No, it's a safe place where you can be who you are and have
Right.
conversations with your peers and without the fear of judgment or any of those things. What are some of the other settings that you've seen be successful? I know you do media, you talked about sports. Are there any other kind of settings that people can turn to?
Yes, I will. I would say not necessarily settings. I want to emphasize the professional again. The type of, as you said, the training. I couldn't agree more. So when that person gets to a space, going back to your question before, that they are ready to seek support and help, how you show up matters. Like I said, I don't mind getting out there, and I go from the suburbs to urban settings.
Yeah.
James, I'm deep in what they call the hood on a weekly basis. So able to go in different spaces and do this work and understanding how you do it. Last year, I participated in a training called Decolonized Therapy for Black folks, developed by my good sister Shauna Mary Brown. And with this framework, she taught us a liberation focused healing framework. With this framework, James, is about transforming, interrogating the way therapy is done
Yeah.
with our communities and so many other communities, and interrogating and transforming the way it's done, how it looks, understanding that, as you said, it's not a one size fit all. It's not, James, Hubert, and Jamal, they all gonna get the same. No, because our experiences are different. We could be all Black men, but our experiences are still different. Our values are different. Our perspectives are different. So understanding that as a clinician, like I put that onus on us, Brother James, for us to have our stuff together, and making sure that we are becoming lifelong learners with our practice to explore various ways to offer interventions that best serve and support. And it could very well be, and one of the tenets of liberation focused healing that I'm a big proponent of is rooted village cultivation, right? What does it look like? Because I'm of no mind that as a therapist, what I do is the end all be all.
Yeah.
That'll be just ridiculous thinking. I see myself as one part of a team and supporting that individual. But if you find comfort and a safe space being a part of a chess club or a STEM club after the school, then I need to be mindful as a clinician. Who am I building relationships with in the community?
Right.
African drummer. Who am I building relationships with that will provide a safe space for the person I'm holding space for, who is doing something that will interest them, and they will receive the same amount of care, understanding, and support. I need to be mindful of developing these type of relationships within our community.
Right.
Again, that's about expanding what healing looks like for our community, and not a one set. Okay, we're going to give you 12 sessions. We're going to do cognitive behavior therapy, and you're going to be good to go after that. Talk therapy don't work for everybody.
Right. Right.
I'm not a fan of yoga, but I don't dismiss it. Movement is extremely important. I don't do play therapy, but it's significant and it can have an impact. I don't do art therapy, but it's significant and have an impact. Understanding these different modalities are important, and it's up to us as clinicians to broaden and really challenge ourselves in the way we practice and how we best serve folks.
Thank you. I mean, it's on us, going out to the people and identifying what they need and what works best for them. And that doesn't look the same for everybody. That might have been the one last thing you wanted to leave the folks. But if there is an additional one thing you'd like to leave the audience about the importance of mental health, taking care of it, how that affects your family as a whole, from you as the individual, what would you want to leave the folks?
I would just encourage folks to ask questions just like they do of their primary physician. When they're looking for a therapist, ask them about their values, their perspective, their experiences, their training. They have a right to deal. Psychology today, they'll list some things, but call and engage with that clinician.
Right,
See what they're about
right.
and see if they're the right fit for you. I encourage folks to do that. You may be a Christian, and faith-based counseling, works best for you, because that's what resonates with you. I would say, you have the power and the right to shape the healing and support that you want for your life. And I encourage folks to do so.
Be an active participant.
Mm,
Uh, Ask questions. Don't go with
mm.
just the first one. Get a second opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. We would do it for buying a car or buying a house. Why not do that for our mental health? Bobby, thank you. Please let the people know where they can find you, for to follow you on some of the great things that you are doing out in the community. Where can we find you at?
For sure, folks can always go to my website, www.sonofadream.com. You can also find me on social media. On Instagram, I'm Son of a Dream LLC _. On Twitter, I'm Son of a Dream LLC. I'm on Facebook as well. My personal Facebook page is Bobby Marvin Holmes, and then it's my Facebook fan page, Son of a Dream. And again, you can find everything on my website, sonofadream.com.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will leave that information in the description so people can have that as well. Brother Bobby, thank you. I appreciate the support on coming on the show and helping us have a better understanding of the importance of taking care of our mental health. And I do want to thank you for supporting me and encouraging me on this journey to always get better and help our community and be the best that we can be. So thank you. And if there's anything that I can do for you in the future, would love to be able to participate and be a part of that. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
No problem, James. I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, brother. A dad's thing is so needed. Your podcast and also the work in your community. You've been a strong representation is needed, brother. Keep going.